So I thought I'd do Laplace this time, since we had talked about him last time and his name is all over. It's really funny because I'm teaching number theory right now too, and we're doing Euler-Totient function. Man, he had his claws and everything. But Laplace has a very interesting history, and my son had told me that he was poor, but he actually wasn't. And if you go to the math website that looks at math history, I mean, there's mathematicians who actually study math history. So what they pointed out is that it's actually inaccurate. Laplace was not a peasant farmer. He's actually pretty well off. His father was in the cider trade and his mother from a well-off farming family. However, they did not have academics in their family. He had an uncle who was a high school teacher for math, but there were no other academics. So that might have been surprising that there were no other, physicists coming over and saying, you know what, Laplace, you really should go into math. He was supposed to have a career in the church, just like D'Alembert, and he started at 16 years at Caen, which was a religious school, but there he fell in love with math. This kind of seems to be a resounding theme of all these individuals. His math teachers that were there, they were not famous or anything, they were just regular math teachers, but they encouraged him to continue on a career in math. So he left Caen without a degree, and I think the degree that they wanted him to get there was theology, and he brought a letter of introduction to D'Alembert from the math teachers from his high school. So I always thought D'Alembert came after Laplace, but it looks like Laplace came to D'Alembert. So he really impressed D'Alembert, and D'Alembert got him a position at École Militaire. And that's where he began to publish. He improved upon Lagrange multipliers, which I think you learned them in Calc 2. You definitely might have seen them in operations research. And he read a second paper on difference equations. Note that I'm saying read. They weren't published. So he read an oratory version of his work there to the Academy of Science, but they weren't published. His first published paper was actually in integral calculus, and he republished a more clean version 3 years later. He had errors in the first paper, but he blamed the errors on the printer and the dates don't seem to be right, 1771 and 1774. This is around the same time that everybody else in our PDE book is floating around, Fourier, and they're all around the same time. He really wanted to go to the Academy of Science in Paris, but Vandermonde, I don't know if you talk about Vandermonde matrices, I think that matrix guy was selected instead of him. Next, Cousin was selected, and Laplace was, he was pissed off because he felt he was better than the other two. D'Alembert actually intervened on his behalf and tried to get Lagrange, who was the president of the Berlin Academy, which we remember Euler was at and didn't want D'Alembert to take over. He wanted Lagrange to bring in Laplace at that time. But in the meantime, he was appointed not as a regular position, but as an adjunct to the Paris Academy. So he took that. He read 13 papers on the day he was elected to the Academy. And Condorcet, he's also a matrix guy, who was the permanent secretary, he was wowed. He was floored at how many new results were being presented. Laplace continued to work in differential equations, but he also built up a lot of probability theory and worked on the solar system, as many other people did in this time. He was cocky, and he started to upset D'Alembert at that time because he was revamping some of the work D'Alembert had done. But he seemed to recognize and he appreciated D'Alembert's help, so he kind of stepped back and was very gracious about things. He also started to work on calorimetry, which is the area that I work on. We talk a lot about energy expenditure, and this was with Lavoisier in 1780. This actually is the real beginning of, I guess, obesity research, because it's your first ability to measure how many calories people are burning through heat. You're measuring heat, and this is exactly what they were doing. So in many of the talks that one of my friends gives on, he does a lot of stuff on energy expenditure, he begins with Lavoisier's work. So he was actually very active in committees. I don't know why he would like to do that, but he likes to do that. I don't like to do that. But he was on the committee that developed the metric system. My son interpreted this as he developed the metric system. No, he was on the committee that developed the metric system. And during the French Revolution, Lavoisier, as you know, was guillotined, but Laplace left Paris to avoid that. he actually did a lot of work together for probability, and he founded Bayes' theory. And he predicted that, this is actually, I don't know if you don't have a graduate probability class. That's a shame, actually. We should actually revamp a graduate probability class where you learn measure theory. But in short, the idea is that if you have a machine, in a short period of time, it will not break. You don't expect it to break. But over time, over a long period of time, you expect it 100% to break, right? So this is what we call a Poisson process. And Laplace was actually the theoretician who began that area. And in fact, it was in relationship to astronomy. He predicted that we might not get hit by a meteor in a short time, but over a long time, we're 100% certain that we will get hit by a meteor. He died in 1827, and this is a very abridged version of his work. He expanded in very different areas. You know that he already did a lot in differential equations, but he also contributed quite a bit to probability theory, which I don't think is covered here in our master's program, but now that I think of it, it should be. So maybe I'll bring that up. That's unfortunate. But he died in 1827, which is not that long ago. And I believe, not Condorcet. Yeah, I think last time I told you there was an individual that was probably my OD teacher's advisor at the end. So you're talking now into the realm of modern day differential equations.